So now we have a new acetylene tank in here. I've already put the soap on to make sure I had no leaks. But let's look at what I have written down here, which will be out here when you're working with this. First thing is to open up the tanks at their valves. So the acetylene tank and the oxygen tank, valve, valve, open, open. And then we see our capacity here jump up to, we have 1200 PSI in here, saying that we have a full tank, okay? Dial in the regulator plunger until the oxygen gauge reaches 20 PSI, and then open it and adjust it so that it stays at 20 PSI. So we've done that. So we dialed in, got it up to 20, and then we fine-tuned it so we know we're at 20 PSI, okay? Now with this one, I'm gonna dial in the other regulator plunger, the acetylene tank, until the gauge reads 5 PSI. So I'm gonna dial this in until I'm at 5, right over 5 there. Now I'll open it up, and then fine-tune it to 5 PSI. And I'll close it, open it, so it drops down perfectly to 5. So we have 20 and 5. That is the two, if we look on here, those are the two numbers that we're looking for in setting up the tanks here, okay? I am not going to light this when I have the tanks on the table here. I want the tanks far from me. I have enough hose here that I can keep them at a distance from myself and away from where the flame is that I'm working with. So I'll put these in an area over here that is away from the area that I'm working with. My setup, I have my C-clamp in the vise here, and I'm able to access both sides with the flame that I have on, flame that's on here. I'm not wearing gloves for this. I'm not going to be turning the heat towards me. I'm not going to be touching anything hot in this. I'm just going to heat up both sides of this, and then I'm going to introduce the brazing rod. Okay? The brazing rod that we're using is a Bernzomatic. It's a nickel silver brazing rod. It has a working temperature of about 1680 to 1700 degrees Fahrenheit. So that means that that's where we're melting, let's say. And acetylene can get up to be well beyond that. And with the oxygen in there, we can get very hot with this, where we can bend very thick metal using oxyacetylene. The propane doesn't work as well in heating up materials to this thickness. Propane and oxygen, oxypropane, is something that's very commonly used in commercial applications. We don't have that here at the building. We have oxyacetylene and we have propane. So those are the two fuels that we'll be using. So anytime that we're heating up that we need to get to those temperatures for a brazing rod, the soldering we were talking about 700 degrees. Here we're talking about 1700 degrees. So we're getting much hotter, and we're looking to get a red color on this. So when steel gets to red, it's able to be bent. And it's also, in this case, where it's cleaned up, how we have with the file, it's also going to be ready to accept material into it. Notice it's blue on the outside, and it has a nickel silver in the core there. That blue is our flux, and that we're familiar with what the flux is doing here. It's giving us an environment that's going to clear out the oxygen, that's going to give us a good bond onto here. Other kinds of brazing rods that we've used in the past is a bronze core with a white flux on the outside. And so I used to be able to buy those in 3-foot lengths, so we'd have a real good length to work with. Eventually, this is going to burn down to a point where I don't want students working with it. When we get to 4 inches, I'm going to give a new stick so that we have plenty of distance between what we're working with the flame and our hands here. Okay? So I'm going to, in the next video, light the acetylene, bring in the oxygen, and then we'll start heating this up.